How to Create a Glitch Monologues Season 8 Chapter 2. This is Episode 2 of How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix Monologues Season 8. In this episode, we will be discussing the historical significance of freedom of assembly to the formation of a consensual reality. In previous episodes, we discussed how specific political systems are associated with specific forms of reality. Specifically, we discussed how autocratic systems rely upon the state's monopoly on force, whereas open societies, democratic societies, require consent of the governed. These two contrasting foundations produce non-consensual and consensual realities respectively within the confines of the state's authority. Now, it is important to note that the fundamental basis of this consent of the governed is founded upon the freedom of assembly or association of the population, protected by the constitutional document, in a constitutional democracy. And the reason for this is that individuals converge further to their consent to the exchange such that the content of the exchange reflects their impulses but not their shadow self, which is preserved from their observation by outs which permit the individual to escape situations which defy their consent to the exchange. In other words, what I am saying is that the right to freely assemble and disassemble is inherent to or required for a consensual expression of identity, preserving the shadow self of an actor. And thus, the freedom to assemble and the freedom to resist compulsion to assemble is necessary as a foundation for this particular form of reality. If you think back to the earliest ages of the origination of consent of the governed, such as the Magna Carta, you have to return to an age of feudalism to truly understand why freedom of association and assembly is so important. Specifically, during the era of feudalism, the only reason why vast numbers would assemble would be for the purposes of war. This assembly represented conscription of the masses by the nobility. Likewise, it is easy to see that freedom of association is necessary for individuals to manage the continuity of their actions, and discontinuity, which ultimately reflects the associations in their minds. Essentially, what I am saying is that freedom of physical association imparts freedom of thought, an internal association, which is necessary to manage gateways and ultimately produce glitches. Thus, autocratic states represent non-consensual realities, which make it exceedingly difficult to manage continuity, loosen associations, and all the various techniques recommended in these podcasts. In this way, it is fair to say that glitching is the ultimate manifestation of your freedoms. It entails conduct that is impossible in autocratic systems, and fundamentally alters the outcome of events. Thus, the development of democracy is an important step in the final recognition that reality is a simulation. From this point we can see that it is not a coincidence that simulation theory is most commonly held in democratic countries. But likewise, in population centers where there is the greatest degree of freedom of assembly and association, embodied by places where population density is not so high that assembly becomes non-consensual, simulation theory should also be more commonly accepted. Thus, we can see that population density and system of government play a role in the common acceptance of simulation theory. Anyway, that's the end of the podcast for today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe.